Stay with us, this gets deeper. Did you know that the deliberate misrepresentation of ancient Egypt's racial identity has been used to justify racist ideologies for centuries? For far too long, the narrative surrounding ancient Egypt has been twisted, obscured, and outright fabricated to deny its undeniable African origins. This isn't just about history, it's about reclaiming a legacy and challenging the deeply ingrained biases that continue to shape our understanding of the world. We're going to confront the uncomfortable truths, examine the compelling evidence, and expose the historical lie that has sought to erase Africa from its own story. So, how did this erasure happen? It began centuries ago, during the rise of colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade. As Europeans sought to justify the brutal exploitation and dehumanization of African peoples, they needed to create a narrative that positioned Africans as inherently inferior. One of the most effective ways to do this was to sever any connection between Africa and the glorious achievements of ancient Egypt. Egypt, with its magnificent pyramids, complex social structures, and profound intellectual contributions, presented a major problem for the architects of this racist ideology. If Egypt was indeed African, then the entire premise of African inferiority crumbled. And so, the myth began to take root, the myth that ancient Egyptians were not black Africans, but rather a separate, superior race, perhaps Caucasian or Mediterranean. But the evidence tells a different story. Let's start with the physical anthropology. Skeletal remains unearthed from ancient Egyptian tombs consistently show cranial and skeletal features that are characteristic of indigenous African populations. Studies of dental morphology, another reliable indicator of ancestry, points to close affinities between ancient Egyptians and other African groups. And what about the art? Ancient Egyptian art, from tomb paintings to statues, depicts people with a range of skin tones, but overwhelmingly features individuals with distinctly African features. Stay with us, this gets deeper. Noses, full lips, and dark skin. Opponents of the African origin of ancient Egypt often argue that these depictions are merely symbolic or that they represent a mixed population. However, this argument ignores the fact that ancient Egyptians themselves identified with Africa. They called their land Kemet, which means the Black Land, referring to the fertile black soil along the Nile River. This name reflects a deep connection to the African continent and its resources. Furthermore, ancient Egyptian language is closely related to other African languages, particularly those belonging to the Afroasiatic language family, which originated in Africa. Linguistic analysis reveals shared vocabulary, grammatical structures, and phonological features that point to a common African ancestor. The ancient Greeks, who had extensive contact with Egypt, consistently described the Egyptians as dark-skinned and having woolly hair. Herodotus, often called the father of history, wrote extensively about Egypt and its people, noting their physical characteristics and cultural practices. Other Greek writers, such as Aristotle and Diodorus Siculus, echoed these observations. So why does this myth persist? The answer lies in the enduring legacy of colonialism and racism. For centuries, the narrative of a non-African Egypt has been perpetuated in textbooks, museums, and popular culture, reinforcing the idea that Africa is incapable of producing advanced civilizations. This is not simply an academic debate, it has real-world consequences. It affects how we understand history, how we perceive different cultures, and how we address issues of racial inequality. It's time to dismantle this false narrative and reclaim the truth about ancient Egypt. By acknowledging the African roots of Egyptian civilization, we can begin to heal the wounds of the past and build a more just and equitable future. The evidence is clear. The truth is undeniable. Ancient Egypt was an African civilization, and its legacy belongs to all of humanity. Subscribe to Punna Afrik for more African history and wealth wisdom. Follow for more untold African stories.